Ever feel like you're stuck in a loop trying to fix yourself with grand gestures that never work? I mean, obviously that doesn't work because you're trying to become a morning person when you've hit snooze your entire life. And that's just not how human psychology works. You see, I like to look at monks, modern and ancient monks. They used to have this philosophy where you sweep the same hall every single day, and every single day you slightly get better at sweeping the same hall over and over and over and over again. Or you fish in the same pond, and maybe you don't catch a fish one day, and maybe you don't catch a fish for 100 days straight. But it's not the concept of catching the fish, it's the concept of fishing every single day. And I think this concept of doing the same thing over and over and over until you finally get better at it is something that you need to apply to your life. Because if you're trying to change your life overnight with some grand gesture like, okay, I'm broke. Tomorrow I'm gonna make $1 million. That's not how it works. You need to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and you need to be able to say, okay, how can we get 1% better every single day? And this is actually a tattoo I have on my arm is Kaizen, the only tattoo I have. And a lot of people get this tattoo and they don't really think it means much because the westernized version is get 1% better every day. That's the philosophy that you go for. Get 1% better every day. But when we really look at the root of what this means, it goes back to the same concept of sweeping the same hall over and over and over again for years. And maybe you don't improve the second, the third, the fifth, the 10th, the 100th day of sweeping the same hall. Maybe there's still some dirt on the floor. Maybe your broom breaks. But that doesn't mean you don't stop sweeping. You have to be able to sweep that same hall every single day or fish the same pond every single day to be able to get better mentally, not at what you're doing, but mentally get better. And I think so many people misunderstand this concept of self-improvement because they try so hard to get better so suddenly, and then your brain just collapses in on itself like a dying star because you're overloading your brain with so much information and so much change that it doesn't have time to apply that change to the maximum efficiency. It doesn't have time to really change and shape your brain and your thought process to be able to get better at the things that you want to get better at. If you want to get better and create lasting change for yourself and for your future self, you need to not have a dramatic overhaul. And I think this is the mistake that so many people make. And you may be saying, what are you, a 21-year-old kid, telling me how to change my life? You can agree that sometimes so much change just breaks you down instead of lifting you up. And I like to think back to the monk sweeping the hall. Maybe he changes one stroke of his broom every single day, but he's not taking out a vacuum and trying to assemble a vacuum so that he optimizes his performance with the hall. That's not the point. The point is that you have to be able to create lasting change. And the only way really to create lasting change is to slowly and meticulously get better at these things and get better 1% every day. So this goes back to the philosophy of Kaizen. This philosophy, which I just love so much, it's not get better 1% every day. Like I said, that's the westernized version of this philosophy. The philosophy is doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, not to necessarily get better, but to strengthen the mind. And you need to be able to strengthen the mind and hardwire and hard code into your mind that no matter how many times you do this thing, whatever you're trying to accomplish, no matter how many times you try, you always get back on your feet and you always do it again. And maybe that monk sweeping the hall does the same thing every single day. Like I said, maybe on day 100, he's swept the hall the exact same way every single day. But it's the importance of the fact that he's doing it every single day, not the importance that he's necessarily dramatically changing how he's doing it. And now I'm not saying if you have certain habits that you should push these habits and do them every single day instead of changing these habits. Obviously, if you have negative habits or mediocre habits, then you should want to be able to get rid of those habits and improve as a person. And look, yes, I am 21. Yes, I did drop out of college, but at the same time, I have learned so much about life and so much about my mind because I put myself through these hardships and because I went broke and I can't pay rent and I couldn't eat. When all of the noise in the ego is cut aside, then you become this person without the noise and without the ego. And I think that's so important to hit this point in your life. And I'm going through it right now where your ego is gone and your mental state is having to become stronger so that you can push through and continue to do this. Because some days you're going to be sweeping the hall and some days you're going to be saying, why am I sweeping this hall? Why have I been doing this for so long? Everybody calls me crazy. Everybody calls me insane. Nobody else is doing what I'm doing. Nobody else is doing it to the extremes that I'm doing. Nobody else is showing up every single day. Nobody else is putting in the work every single day, even though there's an invisible bubble of what you're actually doing. And the problem is with social media nowadays, you'll see so many people with rented cars or fake watches or lifestyles that you want. And I'm not saying you shouldn't chase after these lifestyles, and I'm not saying you shouldn't aspire to be a better person, but I'm saying you're chasing after and you're trying to improve on yourself in the wrong categories. You're trying to become this person that doesn't benefit you. Because at the end of the day, if you're trying to build wealth and take care of your future generations, then you need to be able to slowly change, and you need to be able to work at something for so incredibly long that you start to lose your sanity because everybody from the outside is telling you this will never work. You know deep down you can accomplish these wonderful, amazing things and have the life that you want and have the physical and mental and spiritual fortitude that you want to have in life. And so I think it's important to be able to sweep the same hall every single day. And even if you don't change the way you're sweeping, or even if you don't see a difference, eventually you will sweep that hall perfectly. And eventually, if you're fishing in the pond, you will catch a massive fish. And eventually, if you're working on the business and you're putting in the effort and the hours and the dedication and you still don't have results, eventually it will click. And I think that's the only thing that's keeping me going, is I know that eventually it will click. And I don't know if it's going to be 5 years. I don't know if it's going to be 10 years. I don't know if it's going to be 100 years. But the thing is that I'd rather die than give up on what I'm doing. Because the thing is you only have one life. And I know so many people say this, you only have one life, but it takes a drop of ego. It takes you to just be present in the moment or a near-death experience to actually realize that you only have one life. Gratefully, I haven't had that near-death experience, but I have hit something called satori on accident. One day I was sitting there and I was thinking about artificial superintelligence and how in the future it could just take over society in a blink of an eye. And that got me thinking, well, if it can just take over society in a blink of an eye, then nothing really matters. Nothing really matters. And I was sitting outside one day and I realized that even without artificial superintelligence coming, nothing really matters at the end of the day, because in such a short period of time, we're all going to be dead. What I'm saying is that eventually everybody on this earth is going to die. And eventually everybody on this earth is going to get old and hopefully have families. And even if you're young, the thing is that you have to be able to realize that my ego and everything I see online and everything I have worked towards doesn't really matter. But in a way that should also be super liberating, because now you don't have anything holding you back. And so I think the sooner you can realize that everything in the world is your fault, everything that has happened to you is your fault, and the sooner you can realize, I don't need this drastic change tomorrow. What I do need is to become 1% better every day. And I know that sounds easy. It's really difficult. I understand you can fall back into these bad habits and you can fall back into these things that your mind pulls you into. But you need to put your ego aside for a second and you need to just look at your current situation and think to yourself, how can I not have a drastic change? But what is one step that I can do tomorrow that gets me better, that pushes me forward, that forges my mind? What is one step tomorrow where I can recreate a good day? What does a good day look like to you? What does a purposeful day look like to you? And how can you recreate that purposeful day again and again. Because at the end of the day, we all are sweeping the same hall. And some of us will stop sweeping the hall, and some of us will say, what's the point? I mean, nobody's here. Nobody's on the sidelines cheering. Until you sweep that hall perfectly, nobody's going to give you praise. Until you catch that big fish in the pond, nobody's going to give you praise. And so I think this also goes to the fact that there's so many people chasing the wrong things. There's so many people wanting praise from other humans. But why do you want praise from other humans? Why do you want people to cheer you on? Because everybody's going to die. This goes back to what we were saying. Everybody is going to die. And the reason that you want praise from other people is your ego. That's the only reason. It's your ego. You want to look better in front of other people. You want people to cheer you on so that your ego gets uplifted, because you're being greedy. You're being greedy. You need to just push everybody aside for a second, and you need to just look at yourself and see how you can become a better version of yourself instead of continuously wanting praise from other people. This is the subtle art of personal transformation. There's a reason I call it the subtle art, because it's not one grand announcement to the world. It's not one grand announcement to yourself. It's slowly and meticulously doing the things that you have to do every single day and getting better, or not even getting better, but just doing it again. And slowly, by doing it again, you get better, and then eventually you'll have the things that you want in life. Maybe I'm wrong about all of this, but I don't think I am. Maybe you disagree with me. But before you come at me and before you disagree with me because I'm young or because I'm not as experienced as you, ask yourself, is this my ego talking, or do I actually disagree? Because I guarantee 99.9% of you just have too big of an ego. And so you need to cut down that ego, and you need to be able to fish in a pond for years until you catch the fish. And so if any of that helped, please like and subscribe, because there's so many more pieces to this story that I'd love to share with you. And you have no idea how much a subscription helps. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.